everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of Why We Grow. Today, I had the opportunity of meeting with Brie the Plant Lady, and she has such an interesting story. She's been gardening for a very long time, and she grows so many different unique things. I am so inspired to follow in her footsteps and grow lots of grains and peanuts, things like that. So great. She's even wrote a couple books all about it. Can't wait to read those. Already ordered them. So I'm super excited to introduce you all to Brie. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Brie.
Well, thanks for having me. This is such a pleasure.
So remind me, where are you from?
Well, I'm originally from southeastern Michigan,
Okay.
and I studied horticulture at Purdue in West Lafayette, Indiana. And then 20 years ago, I made my way down to Raleigh, North Carolina. And
Okay.
that's where I've been in Zone 7 on the East Coast ever since.
That's right. Yeah, we're in zone 7 as well, but not in the same area. It's complete opposite, I feel like.
I feel like
We're
I
in
feel like
Oklahoma.
zones just touch the very basics, and every like your because your zone 7 climate is so dry and different from mine. It's funny that we can grow some of the same plants.
Oh, I know. It's great though.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a lifelong gardener. Thanks really to my family, my parents and my grandparents on both sides were really into gardening.
Mhm.
And so it was just kind of the thing that growing up, that's what we did on weekends. Like to feel like we accomplished something was to fall down dead in bed after working really hard in the yard all day.
That's awesome. What kind of things did you grow?
Well, my parents were really into ornamental horticulture. They had a beautiful landscape, so we had lots of trees and shrubs and daylilies and hostas. Coming from Michigan, hostas grow basically like shrubs.
Uh,
They're like three
that's
by
amazing.
three. These enormous plants. Like that's not how they perform in Zone 7. I know
No.
you understand that. um we really spent a lot of time focusing on beautifying our home landscape. And my parents got more and more into it. They started building like ponds and water gardens. And
Wow.
it's just I think it's just a really great hobby, and particularly for people who, if you have a larger property, um it's just it's a great way to spend your time and energy.
Yeah.
When you're not motivated to go places, you want to stay home. Gardening is the
Yeah.
really the most logical hobby you could have.
Oh, I absolutely agree with that, and that's so true. We spend so much time outside, and it's amazing for so many reasons. It keeps you busy. Like, yeah, it's great. So, what about now? When did you get started doing this on your own?
Well, when I came to North Carolina, I was working as an estate gardener. And at that time, I was renting a house.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have the ability to really garden for myself. It was a tobacco barn, a converted tobacco barn in the deep in a Carolina pine forest. So gardening would have been
So
challenging
interesting.
anyways. There were like 1,000 deer that just like circled the house. So
Wow.
growing plants there would have been really hard.
Yeah.
When I bought my first house in 2005, that's when I really kind of dove into home gardening. And it's kind of funny over the course of my career how my hobby as a home gardener has actually superseded my career in nursery production. As after I left estate gardening, I became the production manager at Plant Delights Nursery, and then went into tree and shrub production, and didn't really anticipate that ever changing. But it was actually a really exciting opportunity when Joe Lample approached me about working with Growing a Greener World TV, and to feature my home garden as the main point of interest. Like what I was growing in my home garden was a little bit different. Living in the suburbs with a homeowner association was something that sometimes it can be really challenging for people to figure
Absolutely.
out how to navigate gardening and keeping your neighbors happy. And that was kind of always just what I was doing as my side interest, not my career. And so, yeah, it's been since 2014 that what I do here on my property is my primary focus now for communicating to other home gardeners, and it's an incredible privilege. Because I think there's like endless opportunities for what we can do in just a common landscape, from making better plant selections with regard to their resiliency to climate and their benefits to pollinators, to my focus growing food crops to make it so that you feel this satisfaction in the time and effort that you put in, and also maybe to extend that to community development and making it so that our landscapes actually serve the people in our communities that need it the most. I think for me in general, horticulture represents this unending opportunity to make the world better. And that's a really big motivator to just keep on going, keep encouraging people to grow, because everything that you plant shakes out to make a positive difference in the world. It Not every job gets to come with that tagline,
Yeah.
you
Oh
know.
my gosh. That's amazing.
It's a
So,
power, we're a powerful industry. The horticulture as a whole, the green industry, everything we do in some context can address a problem that society faces. We're not always fixing the problems. We have a lot of practices that I think need to be rethought. The landscape industry as a whole isn't always making the wisest plant decisions or the best land management choices, but we have nowhere to go but up, and we have only more and more relevance as more people exist, as our environment is more challenged, and the people with horticulture knowledge are here to help, be part of that think tank to make the world function. And I think everybody who grows plants should just feel like, okay, check one thing off. I'm doing something right.
so is that what got you motivated to get started?
Well, I mean, I don't think that I was so idealistic in the beginning.
Uh-huh.
Um, I really owe my passion for horticulture to 4-H and the local extension agents who, my parents being into gardening, recognized that I had an interest and they got me into 4-H. And we were not farmers at all. Like, no livestock. My parents didn't really even vegetable garden. And 4-H was able to kind of expand my horizons, and the knowledge that those extension agents share with people of all ages, because I don't want to live in a world without master gardening programs. But, as a kid, 4-H is what really got me to understand, oh, you can study this in college, and this is actually a really important aspect of science to understand. It isn't magic. Sometimes I think we want to kind of diminish it down to, oh, I planted a seed and like magic, it germinated. But it isn't magic. It's biology, chemistry. It's actually really important to understand what happens to make a plant grow. And 4-H is how I was introduced to that. I wouldn't be
That's
where I am
wonderful.
if I hadn't had that in my formidable years. And so, thank you, extension agents all across the country, for all of the service you provide.
Yeah, I would love to get my kids involved in 4-H. That would be so wonderful. What grade did you start doing that?
I think I was 8. So, is
Okay.
that like
Yeah,
third grade?
probably about that. Yeah.
And it was, 4-H extended way beyond horticulture, because so much of that is in understanding community development. And, we would have opportunities to like go to the mayor's office and watch how the city government functioned. And, um, of course, there's a lot to do with farming and livestock. But we also did a lot this was in the 80s, when recycling was just getting started. So we would do a lot of volunteering at the recycling center. And
That's great.
it was just a really important community outreach that I think particularly now, I mean, we're looking at what, 30 years later, there's more suburban sprawl than there ever has been. And a lot of times people are disconnected from the communities they reside in and aren't necessarily in communication with their neighbors. And I look to organizations like 4-H, or like junior master gardeners or school gardening programs, as really a way to kind of enable communication and make it so that people can kind of come together in something that is fundamentally important to life,
Yeah,
and making the
absolutely.
next generation better stewards and having a greater awareness of, what it takes to make the world go round. We need these programs.
Well, that's fantastic. It sounds like you're doing a lot too to share that message and with everybody else.
Well, that's my life's goal.
Yeah.
I'm not very well rounded. Like if someone asks me about sports, I get this like bewildered look because I'm like,
Yes, sports. You work out in the garden and dig and all of that.
I
Hey,
feel
all of
like
that is really
horticulture
good
and gardening
exercise.
is a sport, and it's better time than doing repetitive motion in a gym, or I'm not
Absolutely.
sure I'll totally need to have like all of my joints replaced as a result of gardening,
Yeah, it's an amazing
hopefully not.
whole body workout. I feel like every time you go out in the garden and dig and do like, oh, it's yeah, completely
And it's
underrated.
endless imagination. Like there are no 2 days that are the same. There's no 2 seasons that are the same. The garden will never look the same from one day to the next. I mean, it just kind of fits like every check mark, at least for somebody like me who probably has ADHD, needs constant stimulation. Like gardening
I'm
is
with
the
you.
most logical thing ever.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you've grown in a lot of different places. What were the biggest differences that you had between the different places you grown?
Soil.
Okay.
Soil. As a native Midwesterner, I really took for granted all the organic matter that was just in the ground, that you could dig a hole and stick something in and not really work very hard,
Yeah, yeah.
And, the soil profile in the warmer climates, and this is partly where the zones really do become important. Zone 7 is basically just a determination of what your low temperature averages are. Well, our low temperature averages often mean that our ground doesn't freeze in zone 7. And when your ground doesn't freeze, all that organic matter washes away when you have rainstorms anytime during the year. Whereas, like in Michigan, the ground was frozen for half the year. You weren't gardening in the wintertime there because you couldn't put a shovel in the ground. But
Yeah.
all that organic matter was being retained. And when I moved to North Carolina, I remember my boss Nancy Goodwin at Montrose explaining to me like, well, the one thing you'll never be done with here is soil improvement. You'll always need to add more organic matter. And I was just
Uh,
like looking at her like she was on Mars. Actually, I was on Mars. And that is I think the biggest difference. I mean, the plants obviously will perform differently, and your seasons are, we have a long frost free season in North Carolina, basically April to November. um, but I think the biggest difference regionally is soil. And in North Carolina, we have a lot of northern transplants like me.
mhm.
In fact, you almost never meet someone who's from here. If you
Wow.
visit Raleigh, almost everyone is like from Pennsylvania or New York or New Jersey or Ohio, and probably in part because they want to have a milder winter, you know.
Yes. Yes.
But
I
when
don't
they
blame them at
go to
all.
garden, it's really hard for people who have, say, gardened in the north for 30 years to change what they do. And that's a big part of my message as a transplant, to convey like, I understand why you want to do what you want to do, but it doesn't work here. you know
Yeah. So do you do a lot of gardening in containers then to try and combat the soil issue?
I do. I counted because I'm actually filming a class on foodscaping in containers
Oh,
tomorrow.
great.
And I have 86 containers planted,
Wow.
which is not rational. I am not encouraging anyone to do that. No, I do not have an irrigation system. So, yes, that is
Oh
86 containers that have to get watered every
my
day.
gosh. Wow.
But,
I don't know how you keep up with that. We do a lot.
it's a daily task.
Yeah, we definitely do a lot of like container gardening too. We use a lot of smart pots though. Have you ever used those
Yes.
before?
Oh, I love smart pots.
Yeah. Yeah, they're
Oh,
absolutely
I mean,
amazing.
the fabric bag phenomenon of like the last 15 years, they last for forever. They're
Yeah, I
so
didn't think that they would.
I didn't either. And I'm like, some of these bags I've had growing for 10 years and
Yeah.
they're still totally, they're fine. I don't even change the soil out. I can't believe how effective they are. And, you know, they're lightweight. You can move them. I love the ones with handles.
Yes, same
So if you
here.
do need to move them around, they're easy to grab. And
Yeah, absolutely. So if we have like an early freeze or a late freeze, either
yes,
way, I'm always like, oh, I'll just go pick up that smart pot, bring it inside.
it's exactly it. I have a huge lime, that I've been growing for 15
Oh,
years.
yeah.
And I've had it in a 15-gallon smart pot for at least the last 5 years because the plant itself is huge. I don't need it to weigh more putting it in a heavy pot, you
Oh,
know?
yes. Yeah.
So, and that's not hardy here. So it totally comes in and out on a regular basis.
Yes. Yeah, that's amazing. We would love to. We've never been successful at keeping alive a citrus tree yet. They've usually lasted a couple years and then we forget about them or and accidentally leave them out for a frost or something. But I'm motivated to get it done now. And
Well,
definitely putting them in a smart pot is going to make that successful.
that is definitely a good tip. I sometimes it is so large, and it's always in the way. Like no matter where I put it, it's somehow in the way. And of course, they're thorny, so that doesn't help their
Yeah.
cause.
So how do you go about organizing? You have 86 containers. How does your garden look? Like, well, how do you organize that?
Well, I have a large property, so I'm on an acre,
Okay.
and I have containers in large groups in different sections of the garden that have easy access to hoses.
Okay.
So, like around my what I call my greenhouse, however, I don't cover it with plastic. It's basically just a shade structure. Um, I have water access there. So I have a ton of big fabric bags planted there that I can keep planted year round. Through the cool season now with like broccoli and cabbage and things.
Hmm.
And then in the summer with, tomatoes and eggplants and peppers and sweet potatoes and squash and zucchinis. Um, Other pots, like I do a massive display in my driveway. I always think it's kind of shocking for people to realize what you can do on concrete.
Oh, yeah.
Driveways are sometimes, they're just not considered to be part of your garden. And so I've made it my mission to have like a fake courtyard. So I have all of these planted containers. In fact, I grow rice in pots in my
Oh,
driveway, which is it blows people's minds because first of all, most people have never grown rice, and you
yeah.
certainly don't think of growing rice on concrete.
Yeah,
You can,
don't you need a
a
whole bunch
big
of water?
plastic pot with no drainage holes, and the rice grows totally
Huh.
without trouble. And
Oh,
so
that's
it's more,
amazing.
it's just like a creative, unusual thing to give people the idea that yeah, you can park here and you can still garden. Like, and I really want that to be something that is conveyed to people, particularly those, like, I speak to a lot of retired aged people who are downsizing. And I don't want them to think that their hobby of gardening ends just because they sold their big house in the suburbs and moved somewhere more convenient. You can use patios and,
Absolutely.
front porches and windowsills. And I mean, there's an endless way that you can be creative with plants. And so I try to live by example, but I'm currently, I think, I went a little crazy. I'm not gonna lie. Like,
Well, I know one thing that we've done in the past, whenever we've had a lot of smart pots that need watering and we have trouble keeping up with them, we just get like those really cheap kiddie pools from
yes,
from dollar stores and pop in some smart pots into there, put some water in there, and then waters from below. It's amazing. And that'll
exactly.
save you a lot of time too.
That is very good advice. I'm actually planning, speaking of kiddie pools, I was visiting some gardens in Philadelphia for the Perennial Plant Association back in August. And Stone Lee, which is a garden I've never been to before, but really, really cool. They're transitioning it from like turn of the 20th century, mostly Asian plants to native plants. And they're using sunken kiddie pools to create native bogs.
That's interesting.
It blew my mind. They were so beautiful that I'm like completely obsessed. And now I've been like, because kiddie pools are on sale right now.
Yeah, yeah. Now's the time to go out and buy a whole
So
bunch.
yeah, I'm like, I have to go out and buy a whole bunch of kiddie pools. I'll be prepared next year to do your advice too. I'll plant a couple and I'll have them on hand for my compulsive container collection.
Yeah, it's always great. Like before, whenever we were working full time away from the house, it was always good to have that on hand, especially during the summer. And we put, the things that struggled in there and we'd fill it up in the morning before we left for work. And then our plants would be fine during the day.
Well, and we're hot here, but you're really hot. Like,
Oh, it gets really hot. Yeah.
and you're dry and windy, and
Mhm.
I'm always like, it really isn't fair that we're the same growing zone because it's so
Yeah, it
different.
doesn't seem like it, but yeah, goes to show even zones yeah.
There's a lot to be interpreted. That's one thing about gardening. It's really hard. When we were talking about like the how to, it's really hard to give advice on how to do something to a national audience because
Yes.
you're doing everyone a disservice because like what I do here isn't necessarily going to translate in your area. And I think that's one of the things that we should celebrate in horticulture is the hyper regionalism
Mm-hmm.
that there isn't going to be a one size fits all answer,
Absolutely.
and that's good. That's what distinguishes us from the plastic knickknacks at the stores.
Yeah, although I
We
do
are
feel
a
like,
living breathing entity.
yeah, although I do feel like Oklahoma, it can be all zones sometimes.
You
But
have like all zones in a single day.
sometimes it feels like it. Like it'll go from 20 to 80, within a day and snow one day and then hot the next. I don't know. Yeah, it flip-flops so much here, which is
you
challenging in itself.
you are a climate of extremes.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting area to try and grow. That's for sure.
And yet there's amazing horticulture there. I mean, it's been a few years, but I will be in I guess I'll have a meeting in Tulsa in 2025. So it'll be a little while before I get back there, but still it's a beautiful, but it's a beautiful state and you have the
Oh
most
yeah.
amazing sunsets.
Yeah, I love it out here. It's amazing. Yeah. The only thing I don't like is how everything does die off in the winter and it doesn't keep green. That's why we have to keep our green behind us. So that way we
Exactly.
have some green year round.
I mean, you're achieving it very efficiently. You're making me feel like well, I'll be adding more to my backdrop soon once we have frost. All those
Yeah.
tender plants come in.
Yeah,
Then
we were
maybe I'll
actually
go from like 86 containers to like
drop it
56,
down a little
you
bit.
know.
But they're just going to be moving, right? Moving inside.
Yeah, it's not like I'm getting rid of them.
So do you try and grow things year round then?
I do. And in this climate, we actually are in a very forgiving climate here in the Southeast. It's easy to have something growing and really something harvestable, something flowering basically 12 months out of the year. Um, you we do get cold, but we don't get as cold as you. We aren't nearly as windy. I think that's a big part of the difference. So we can do broadleaf evergreens really well. I specialized in camellias for more than a decade of my production career, and you can have a camellia blooming from August all the way until May.
So
So,
what is that? You're gonna have to
oh
tell me
gosh,
about this.
camellias are the greatest plant ever. So they're a broadleaf evergreen shrub, sort of small tree, native to Asia, specifically China and Japan. And there's actually quite a few species. There's like 250 species, but in the landscape world, we basically recognize three species: fall bloomers, Camellia sasanqua; winter bloomers are Camellia japonica, and then the plant that everyone has had in their mouth before but doesn't realize, Camellia sinensis, which is tea. So, like tea, caffeinated tea, like Lipton
Oh,
tea, is Camellia sinensis.
wow.
It's one of those amazing plants like rice that everyone's eaten it, but very few people have ever grown it for
Yeah.
themselves.
Well, that's
I'm
very
very intrigued with
interesting.
that part of the horticulture world, kind of like demystifying agriculture and making it in a novel way where home gardeners can have all these authentic experiences growing something that we take for granted. Um,
Yeah, it is so fun to grow unique things. Like our first really unique thing I felt like that we grew was loofah. And I
yes.
was so excited about it because I had no idea that you could grow your own sponges. I was like, it just blew my mind.
Well, we've been trained to think that sponges come from the ocean, you
Yeah,
know.
I had no idea. I was like, yeah, this comes from the store. Like,
It's funny around here. I live in peanut country, and people see peanuts along the roads in fields every day, all summer long, right? But most people have never actually grown peanuts for themselves, and
yeah.
they're really easy, and they're a nitrogen fixing legume. So use it as a cover crop and it suppresses weeds, and it's got all of these beneficial characteristics, and yet it's not a traditional part of home gardening.
Yeah.
And that keeps me motivated to be able to inspire people just to think a little bit different from what you would find, certainly at a box store, and, take a nod from your local agricultural community and see, like, well, what are they growing? And maybe you could grow that. I mean,
Yeah.
sweet potatoes are another plant that if you live in North Carolina, you almost have an ethical obligation to grow sweet potatoes. You know? It's one of our number one agricultural commodities, thankfully, besides tobacco.
Oh, that's funny. Well, you've inspired me. I definitely think I need to grow some peanuts now. I need to try that.
Oh my gosh. And they're great in containers too, by the way. I
Okay.
actually use them as a ground cover mixed with like peppers, tomatoes, and eggplants. And then you don't have to fertilize those like high need summer veggies
Yeah,
because the peanuts are providing what they need.
that's amazing. I'm all for that. We love
Yeah.
doing like we do a lot of peas and beans and things like that, but knowing that there's another option out there, that's
And peanuts are nice because they're a ground cover. So you don't have to worry about, getting them on a trellis and training them, and it's a one-time harvest. So that's my beef
right.
with beans is like, oh my gosh, it's a
Really going,
full-time job harvesting the beans. you know Whereas the peanuts, you pull them out basically right now, middle of October, and you let them dry in the sun for about a week, and then you're done.
okay. That's amazing. Okay, you've inspired me. I definitely need to try it. I
Woohoo,
will do
mission
it.
accomplished.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I love that idea. Oh, the kids would love it too.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Although, I used to do this in elementary schools, and we have a huge amount of the the child population, it has a peanut allergy, so you do have to
Mhm.
be really careful about
That's
that.
true. Yeah.
I've learned a lot working with public schools, because like to me the easiest way to ensure that we have a new generation of gardeners is to train 8-year-olds.
Oh, yeah.
So we empower the 8-year-olds of today. They will be the gardeners 20 years from now.
Yeah.
um, but it gets tricky with the schools, and also because of the school schedule. It's hard because they're in school during the time when none of the really exciting vegetables are being
Yes.
grown. Like they can get the summer vegetables started, and then they can yank them out when school starts, but somebody has to be there all summer to deal with the garden. And
Yeah.
so I haven't totally figured that out. I'm lucky here in the Raleigh area. Almost half of our elementary and middle schools are actually on a year-round schedule,
Okay. That makes
which
it a
is
little better.
mostly because the population has expanded so much they couldn't keep up with building schools, and year-round keeps the school where they get more students through using the same resources. But that's actually worked out to my advantage because it works with gardening much better. Talk about wanting the world to just revolve around gardening. Let's just change the school cycle, you know?
So, what are some of the best plants that you've seen inspire kids to get started growing?
Well, you know what's really cool? You would think that it would be the more traditional things, but it isn't. And actually, we do a whole program on growing your own bird seed. So
Oh,
essentially, growing a mixed batch of grains,
uh-huh.
and putting them out on like property borders of the school properties, and then they go out and observe all the different bird populations that come and eat at different
Wow.
times of the year. And I think that's a really important like connection to nature, like way expanding beyond like traditional horticulture, but actually growing things like sorghum and millet and rice and wheat and barley and oats for this environmental purpose. Um, that is always hands down the garden activity that gets the kids like the most engaged.
Oh, yeah. That
Um,
would definitely get my 7-year-old. She loves birds. She's always bird watching. She would absolutely love to do that.
Gotta grow your own bird seed. And really,
Yeah.
there's endless things that you can do because, like, obviously, sunflowers and zinnias and buckwheat. I was trying to think about, because I've watched the birds just sort of devour everything in my garden. I'm always like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize, like, oh, they're stealing okra seed right now. So it's kind of the sky is the limit when you think about it, not for growing that for you to consume, but to actually be this ecological value in it. Again, just
Yeah.
sort of shifting your purpose a tiny bit, and the result is, I think it's really phenomenal.
Well, that's great.
Um,
Yeah, we have chickens too, so that would be great for us too,
yes,
because we can save on
yes.
feed by just growing their own.
Exactly. And, because it's expensive. I
Oh,
was just
yes.
at the store. I couldn't believe how expensive chicken and bird seed was. I was just like, oh, wow, I feel like I've saved myself a lot of money. I deserve to buy more plants. That's how I
Great way to think
rationalized
of it.
it, you know.
Oh, that's great. I love it. So what's one of your favorite things to grow?
Ooh, gosh. Well, let's see. I mean, I am passionate about grains. I can't deny that. I wrote a book about grains,
Oh, really?
because I think people should be more aware of like, there isn't a human being on the face of the earth that grains don't touch your life. You either eat them directly or you eat animals that eat them, but grains and humanity are intertwined in ways that I think is really fascinating. And the fact that they're not a part of the home gardening concept at all doesn't make sense. Especially when you can grow them just like an ornamental grass. Like you can grow them in a clump, And then you can harvest the seeds and eat them or feed them to birds or give them to your chickens. Um, Grains to me are just they're so easy to grow, they're so inexpensive. The cool season grains will give you winter interest. Um, I'm just really fascinated by like something as simple as wheat or barley. I mean, think about it. Microbreweries have like taken the world by storm. It's like the thing that millennials do with their free time. Well, you can't have beer without barley, but most people have never grown barley before. And if
Yeah.
you like
Yep.
beer, you should try growing a pot of barley just for, just for the heck of it. It's like,
Yeah.
and it's such a beautiful plant. That's, I think, the main thing for me is like when you can grow an agricultural crop that not only is harvestable, but brings you joy because it's a gorgeous thing to look at, then that is like the full circle. Like there are very few times in my obsession with growing tomatoes, which are the plant that will keep you humble and make you feel like a failure
Every year.
every year, no matter what you do, the tomatoes will let you down because that's what they're there for. But I seldom go out and look at my tomatoes and think, "Oh, you're so beautiful." I don't know that I've ever said those words. It's always like, "Oh my gosh, why are you wilting?" Or "Why are you dying again?" Or
Yep. What is that
like,
pest?
"Oh, it's over 90 degrees, so you're not going to set fruit now." "Oh, the hornworms came and defoliated you."
Yep.
I appreciate plants that don't cause me as much heartache as tomatoes, I suppose. So basically anything other than tomatoes
That's
would be my
awesome.
favorite plant.
Well, I love it. So, what grain can we plant now in zone 7? Is there anything that I can?
Yeah, the cool season grains, I actually typically recommend planting in late November.
Okay.
I have some growing right now. What I find when you sow them too early in the fall, they're really tender and they don't harden off as well. So when we do get cold, they have a little frost damage. Whereas if you start them later when the soil is colder, they kind of grow at the right rate, which is precisely what farmers do. So the cool season grains are barley, wheat, rye, and oats.
Okay.
And they are actually, I give this advice for zones 6 through 9, even though it actually does work for zone 5, because farmers would frequently do a winter wheat cover crop in Michigan and Indiana, which just goes dormant when it's really cold and then springs back to life as the days increase and the soil warms. But certainly zone 6 through 9, the cool season grains will look like something all winter when everything else is dormant. And they are very good as container plants. You can sow them and use the grains as like the thriller in your container plant, and then have like, you know, anything trailing out of it, and Swiss chard or spinach or whatever you want as the filler. And it just gives you a lot of interest through a season that otherwise it can be a little bit boring. I'm never bored, but I just came from Lowe's and I was really disappointed by the lack of options that they had. Like they basically have given up on gardening, and this is the season to be planting like trees and shrubs when you live in a warmer climate.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
love planting and growing in fall. It's one of my favorite times.
yeah, I want the I know my local garden centers do a much better job than the box stores, but the box stores have, I think, they should have a responsibility to raise the bar so that customers can understand the endless opportunities.
Hmm.
Like it shouldn't just be that they only sell holiday decorations at this time of year. They didn't even have a seed rack. I was just crushed because like I love buying seeds. I irrationally love buying seeds. And of course, I was there to buy like light bulbs or something, but I was all excited that I was going to treat myself to some seeds, and they didn't have any. So it's really sad.
Well, then you need to check out the app then and go
That's
seed
right.
shopping in the app. And you can get as much as you want to from Park.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah, we switched this year to all of the Park seeds and it's been amazing. I absolutely love it. We've
The
had such great
quality.
germination rates and it I didn't even realize it before until we started using these. I was like, wow, like pretty much
Huge
everything
difference.
comes up. Like,
Yeah.
really? I don't have to plant like 10?
Well, and Park Seed is where I got introduced to rice. So they
Oh yeah.
sell a variety called Black Madras, and it is so gorgeous. It has purple foliage, and I mean, it's definitely the most asked about plant that I grow year round.
I bet.
Everybody who visits is like, what is that? And Park Seed is just, there's such high quality, and they have such good diversity in their plants in the what they offer. Have you grown the Queenie Lime Zinnia series?
Oh, no, we haven't gotten that color yet.
Yes, get it,
Me too.
get
I
it.
'cause I
And
love those
Park
colors.
sells it. It is so beautiful. They're the most beautiful zinnias you will ever see.
Okay, I will try it
Period.
next year.
Yeah,
Definitely.
they're so remarkable and like big, totally double.
Oh, it's amazing.
And I mean, oh my gosh, they're from the All American Selections program,
Huh?
and they won like the national distinction for like best new zinnia variety. And oh my gosh, they will not disappoint you.
Okay, fantastic. That's like probably one of my favorite flowers to grow, so I will definitely do it this next
You
time.
get a lot of bang for your buck with
Oh my
zinnias,
gosh, yes. And then they're always coming back too. The next season, I just always see so many different zinnias. I'm like, I didn't plant that, but great.
Happy accident,
Yep. Yep. It's amazing. I love how they just plant themselves.
And I've been enjoying the finches, stealing seeds, which I think is how they self sow, because when the finches come and grab seeds off, like seeds fall
Knocks
to the
them
ground.
down.
And,
Yeah.
I always am like, I could see them from where I sit on the couch when I'm watching Netflix, which I do spend quality time not gardening.
Well, you see, you get some nature then, even from inside the house.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, another plant that I've got to say, because it just occurred to me, I've been watching the birds eat, is sesame. And
Oh,
I would say sesame in your climate is something you should definitely look into growing, because it loves heat, and I mean, just a great summer annual. And of course, you can collect the seeds and make tahini, or, you know, toast the seeds and use it for baking. But it's another plant that basically everyone has eaten, but most people have never
yeah.
seen growing.
Yeah.
And that's the opportunity that growing from seed affords you, because these oddball things that I'm trying to normalize, they're never going to be something that nurseries grow and sell as a plant at a garden center. But for a very small investment in a seed packet, you can grow these things that I think will like change your perspective, and really just make you really start to appreciate what it takes to make it so that there are sesame seeds on a hamburger bun. I mean, until I grew sesame, I never once thought about it before.
Yeah. I can't say that I ever have either. So yet another plant. I feel like I should be writing this down. I have so many new
I
plants
can
for me
send
to
you a
try.
PowerPoint, don't worry.
I know,
I
my
speak to
goodness.
the world through PowerPoint.
Well, that's amazing. So you said you had a book. What was your book called?
So I have two books. I have my first
Oh,
book is called The Foodscape Revolution, and that really goes through just creative ideas for incorporating food into ornamental landscapes. It was
nice.
really derived from my experience navigating HOAs,
Yeah.
and figuring out ways that I could do what I wanted and also live by the rules, of which by covenants required.
Well, and
And
so
then my
many people
second
can
book,
relate to that too.
it's, oh
That's
yeah, I mean,
great.
it's, I used to be really annoyed by HOAs. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I definitely was on the like abolish them side of things. Now I would love to harness that organization for accomplishing something bigger. So instead of telling on your neighbors and causing trouble because you don't like the color of someone's shutters, maybe instead the organization of the HOA works towards building a community garden that supports people in need, or has a native plant section that makes it so that this developed landscape is supporting the environment as a whole. Like, I see
Yeah.
there's opportunities when you have a collection of people who are organized and passionate. You can shift their purpose in a way that would then um, have a better end goal. you know, like
Yeah.
my parents live in a neighborhood where their HOA will send letters out if you have your garage door open for more than 15 minutes.
What?
I hope that's not the future of suburban living, because that's tedious beyond what any rational
Yeah, that's a
person
little
should
too
have to deal
much.
with.
Yeah.
And why, like, if you have the time to notice your neighbor's garage door open, maybe you should be doing something like volunteering at the school and putting your energy towards something that would be positive. I hope that's going to be a generation shift. I mean, I may be a little bit optimistic there, but that's at least my goal. With working with HOAs now, I'm always trying to just bring about like the, if you have happy homeowners, um, they're going to appreciate and actually take your guidance more seriously, because if you're providing them something that makes them feel good at the end of the day, then they will actually be motivated.
Yeah.
And so I hope that that will be something that, like, particularly as more young people buy properties, there'll be a shift in that dynamic, because I don't see my generation as one that is necessarily going to be telling on each other for
I
garage door
wouldn't
time.
imagine it.
Like, I hope we have something more to do, right, than that.
Yes. Yes.
Well, my second book, which I wrote right before the pandemic hit, not the best timing, but is called Gardening with Grains. And it really goes over kind of my passion, my newly developed passion for grain crops in general. And I do a deep dive really into soil improvement and more thoughtful approaches to ground plane coverage, with the intention of using that biomass to add organic matter to soil. So then you irrigate less and you fertilize less, you have better microbial activity, and it makes your gardening experience easier. And it's a concept that is well versed in agriculture, but it hasn't really been translated to home gardeners.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is like definitely been like a passion of mine for a long time, and I feel really fortunate to have gotten to put some of that down in a book form,
That's
so hopefully it
amazing.
can instruct people.
So how do
um,
people find your books?
well, they're on my website at briegrows.com. That's Brie like the cheese, BrieGrows.com. They're also online at all the major places. If you buy them from me, I will sign them and personalize them.
Love it.
Amazon doesn't do that, you guys.
Love it. We'll definitely have to check that out.
And I give a lot of instructions. I've set the goal of trying to do a daily YouTube video this year. And I haven't made it every single day, but I've done a lot of videos this year from my garden. They are not
Amazing.
fancy. It's literally me and a cell phone. I
Yeah,
am
that's
not a video
what
editor,
I do. So
but it's just trying to show, like, to break down the idea that this might be too hard or it might be too labor intensive or not knowing what time to do it or where to get stuff, and just to try and bring it down to a level where everybody will feel empowered by the experience of growing plants. And I'm Brie the Plant Lady on YouTube.
Yeah, we'll definitely need to follow you there. It's fun just to watch other people's journeys too in the gardening area.
It really is. I mean, I am so grateful that YouTube exists,
Yeah.
um, just for this exchange of information and ideas. And, what is so great about it is like when someone asks me a question and they're from Minnesota or Wisconsin, it's like I can just say, "Oh, you need to follow so and so." They live there. They'll tell you what to do.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't presume to be an expert somewhere that I've never gardened before, and I don't want to. And so that's why I think YouTube is just so useful in that context, that it's a huge gardening community and it's literal advice that I think it breaks down barriers and makes it seem more accessible. Martha Stewart, a huge influence in my early life. What she does doesn't always feel accessible. Like I don't have that kind of budget. Um,
It would
and
be great
so,
though.
you know, I mean, she's remarkable in every way. But sometimes you watch her and you almost feel like, well, I'm not even going to try. And
Yeah.
I want my viewers to not feel that way. Like,
Yeah.
they'll be like,
I
hey, if
show
Brie
my
can do it,
mistakes
I can do
too, because we're all
it.
human. So I like to focus in on some of those things too. So not everything is positive. There's
Oh no,
lots of
showing your
pests and
failures is
yeah.
super valuable.
Oh yeah.
I
Always
mean,
my hope. I'm like, well, this plant died, so maybe I can share it and explain why and how to prevent it for somebody else.
exactly, exactly. It's like, uh, you know, um, expect that. But, I'm always just like, well, it's just an opportunity to buy something new.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to look at it.
It's just a new packet of seed from Park.
Yeah.
It's one click away.
Well, so that's so amazing. What are your other social medias? Real quick. We
I
just make sure
am,
we hit on all of
let's
them.
see, I'm Brie Grows on Facebook, just like my
Okay.
website. And on Instagram, I am Brie the Plant Lady, just like YouTube. And
Awesome.
I have decided that I'm too old to figure out TikTok, and it's too hectic for me. Actually, Instagram has quickly gotten too hectic for me. I don't like it being noisy and flashy. I'm like, ooh, wow. I just, yeah, I totally understand what my parents were saying.
That's funny. Well, you do post a lot of really pretty pictures on Instagram. I have noticed that. I love your
Oh, well,
pictures on
thanks.
there. They're always gorgeous.
I haven't figured out reels. I managed to have two interns this summer, both of them teenagers, okay, and neither of them do social media. And I totally thought that I was going to have like the ticket and that they were going to do it for me and teach it to me. And they were completely useless with regard
Oh,
to
that's
social
funny.
media. Like they were fabulous workers and they did so much in the garden. And I'm like following them around with a camera, trying to get it all captured. It was so I think that for next year, my goal is going to try to be to find someone who has an interest in marketing,
Yeah.
because that's actually really, really important in addition to the horticulture side, like keeping up with the times and making sure you communicate in a meaningful way is really valuable. And I'm not quite ready to give up, but I'm also not quite ready to dive in.
I don't blame you. There's a lot out there, a lot of different aspects of social media.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love following cats on all of these platforms. I mean, a good cat montage video is kind of all I need for the
Get you every
day,
time. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was really fun and I learned so much. I'm so excited. I feel inspired to get out there and start so many different plants. Definitely peanuts. I've got to get peanuts going. And
Well,
we're
send me your
definitely going to do some
address and
spraying.
I'll send you a care package.
Oh, that's so
I'll get
sweet.
you the Brie obsessive care package sent out to you.
I am so excited. I can't wait to get some of these going.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This has been such a treat, and I hope that when I come out to Oklahoma, I'll get to hang out with you and we'll
Yeah,
spend
absolutely. We would love that.
quality time.
Yeah, definitely let us know if you're in town and we'd love to
Okay, I
see you.
will.
Well,
Same
thank
thing
you so
goes for
much.
you if you find
Oh,
yourself
yeah.
out here in the East.
I'm sure we'll make it out there at some point. I'd love
North
to see you in
Carolina
person
has a
and see your
lot to
garden.
offer from the mountains to the coast, and I'm right in the middle.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much. This was
Well,
really
you are
fun.
welcome. Thank you.